You're listening to Inside Content, the TV industry podcast. This show is brought to you by 3Vision, a global TV industry consultancy specialising in content acquisition, strategy, research, and business development. Each episode, we give you VIP access to the views and experiences of senior TV executives and discuss the latest TV industry trends and insights.
Hello and welcome to Inside Content. I'm Jack Davison, EVP at 3Vision, and in today's episode I'm joined by Simon Cox, EVP Content Acquisitions at Banijay Rights, the distribution powerhouse behind one of the world's largest TV content catalogues. Simon and I dive into how Banijay Rights navigates the ever-changing world of content distribution, from the enduring appeal of crime drama and the shift in streamer strategies, to the growth of AVOD and the renewed focus on windowing. We also explore the evolving appetite for IP-driven projects and what's in store at MIPCOM with Banijay's exciting upcoming slate.
Introducing Video Markets Tracker from 3Vision, your go-to source for global TV data. We offer regularly updated regional and global reports covering pay TV, SVOD, AVOD, and FAST across Africa, MENA, the Americas, Europe, and Asia Pacific. Make smarter decisions with insights you can trust. Learn more at 3vision.tv. Now, on to the episode.
Hello and welcome to Inside Content. My name is Jack Davison. I am EVP at 3Vision, and on this episode today, I'm joined by Simon Cox from Banijay Rights. Good afternoon, Simon. I hope all is well with you.
Thanks, Jack. Pleasure to be here.
Many of our listeners, I would actually probably guess all of them, but I always have to be careful where our listeners come from, will be familiar with Banijay. Banijay Entertainment is a French multinational TV production distribution company, a very large one. In fact, I believe you're described as the world's largest international producer and distributor, with lots of different production countries in lots of different countries. And with that, you therefore are the owner of a very large multi-genre catalogue with hundreds of thousands of hours of programming. Rather than introduce Simon, and I'm going to ask Simon to give our listeners an overview of your role at Banijay and how Banijay Rights fits into that bigger part of Banijay Entertainment. So I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Jack. And that's actually a very good introduction. But yes, so Banijay Rights is the global distribution arm of the Banijay Entertainment Group. As you mentioned, we have over 130 production labels in 22 territories. In the production business, yes, the distribution business has a catalogue of nearly 200,000 hours, and we are a global distributor that represents not only content from the Banijay Entertainment production entities, but it also represents a lot of third-party content. So there's a catalogue that is represented globally and is a very mixed and diverse catalogue. I am EVP of Content Acquisitions in Banijay Rights, so I have responsibility for all content being acquired or IP being acquired for global distribution. And that's across all genres and all medias. So that's formats for global distribution. And there is colleagues in Banijay Entertainment that work on that as well. And across all scripted and non-scripted. I'm sure your listeners will be aware, we also have a separate business called Banijay Kids and Family that runs the children's business. That's separate to ours. So yes, a very big remit for as much content as possible.
That's great. I without going into too much detail of kind of what I've done over my life and how where I've worked in the industry, I always find it fascinating, kind of how different types of content. By that I mean kind of sort of genres, but then also within types, whether it be scripted, unscripted, or genres, whether it be drama, comedy, and then the finer points of those genres. I always find it fascinating how different sorts of ebb and flow in terms of both in taste, in terms of the consumer, but also in terms of how businesses focus on them and how businesses decide kind of where they should be investing and what's the kind of thing they want to do and how do they make sure that they're targeting the right types of content for the market, and then I guess ultimately for the consumer. And given in your role, you're kind of in charge of that acquisition team and kind of responsible for kind of setting that kind of overall, I guess strategy. Selecting what to do is, to me, is a real challenge. How do you kind of focus and prioritize? Often I hear strong narratives, whether that's like crime drama or maybe cozy crime or kind of European ship drama. Like, how do you kind of focus and prioritize the different areas?
Look, it's about having a diverse catalogue with something for every buyer. You'll have seen reports everywhere of everyone saying they want everything, which is not really true. You need to have something that serves a multitude of different buyers. It's having that awareness of what is traveling and what is in demand. We're in a very good position that having production operations in all these territories, we have a bit more awareness of what is being commissioned. So it gives that sort of guidance of what might be in demand. And for me, it's looking at content that will complement and grow our slate, and a mix of, those traditional genres that do work, crime and drama will always sell. And some supplementing that with some really strong narrative authored pieces that are just a bit different and unique. Following and setting some trends, looking at different genre that come in and out of fashion and in and out of taste, and making sure there is a good mix of non-scripted that, again, speaking to different national cultural identities and messages and themes that are going on in the zeitgeist. It's just making sure there's a good mix of that. Banijay in general is very well known for its entertainment and formats offering. So as well, it's a building around those general entertainment and those formats to make sure we've got something that serves the market in those genres that we are very well known for delivering quality product in. So looking at all those genres that are being commissioned, taking a view on as much product as possible to make sure it fits in our mix and the type of content that's got international appeal. As you say, crime drama will always be in demand. That will never change.
Yeah, there's always a demand for that, I guess. And I guess having that kind of diverse portfolio, very diverse for you because of the breadth of your kind of production companies, and suppose you can still take risks because kind of you have that diverse portfolio, and that's something kind of the business just has to do.
Distribution is all about taking risk. In the same way that commissioners are ordering product based on a pitch or a piece of paper, distributors have to do the same thing. We're taking a risk based on a pitch or a script and taking the same creative view that commissions are. So it's having that creative eye mixed with a commercial eye to make sure there's an opportunity there. And there's often a good opportunity in a lot of different products and in places that you wouldn't necessarily expect them to be.
Yeah. And in, I guess, the industry itself, I'm talking kind of broad brushstrokes, which is a bit simplistic of me, but the industry has had some kind of challenges and been complicating over the last few years with kind of the budget restraint and kind of or content austerity and kind of maybe end of peak TV, if you want to pick those headlines. It's worth noting that kind of Banijay Rights, I don't think I should have checked this morning, but last year's Broadcaster Distributor Survey, for the first time ever, you topped the list of distributors with, I think it was close to 400 million in revenues, and that was up about 9 or 10%, I think. So you must be doing something right. But despite that, it's been a challenging environment for streamers and broadcasters, and so they've had kind of content budgets that's faced significant pressures, which then that feeds into the whole production community and everybody else. I mean, how have these challenges kind of impacted your approach in any way?
No, there's no getting away from the fact that, as you say, the world has been challenged in the past couple of years, but that there is always and there will always be a demand for storytelling, whether that is scripted or non-scripted. There is an insatiable consumer demand. Just how those consumers are demanding it has changed. And, there's a phrase we've used a few times, everything changes, but everything stays the same. It's just who is buying and when they're buying has changed. And free-to-air linear, I would say, has been fairly consistent. Streamers, yeah, there's no denying they have been buying less, but they are still buying. And, you could argue a lot of those streamers have gone a little bit more mainstream than they used to be, and that is a good thing. There's no denying that perhaps traditional pay TV platforms have faded away, but that space has been filled by AVOD platforms, which is a very good business for us. So it's just about finding those opportunities, the content that works for a broad audience that is going to appeal to as many buyers as possible. And there is opportunity for that. And I think a lot of that domestic commissioning, not necessarily UK, but generally, the commissioning has shifted in a way that acquisitions has shifted in a way. It's about having the product that buyers want, whether that's an acquisition buyer or commissioner, that is going to serve their audience and bring that audience to that particular platform.
Right, and I think that's interesting, because the way you talked about that, you talked about sort of the changing behaviour, perhaps not necessarily the right word, of the different sort of types of service, and some of them coming in and maybe replacing. But there's been kind of some of the problems you hear about, particularly for UK companies, is sort of holes that have come in to sort of projects from the US. But I guess it's more that we're hearing that it's sort of you're just having to form different types of partnership, maybe with different partners. But because, as you say, people still want content. There's still a need for the content. It's just maybe the tried and tested routes to market for projects over the last few years isn't so secure anymore. So you have to find kind of different partners to make the projects work. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it depends how many partners you need for that particular project and how much funding you need for that project. There's perhaps no one size fits all. Well, there probably never was a one size fits all, but certainly in this day and age, there is no one size fits all model. And finding those partners that are aligned with you and have the same long-term view of content for you, it is important. And, some streamers move to a global position, some streamers move to a domestic position and do want to partner and look at things differently, or looking at, how domestic streaming platforms that are connected to free-to-air broadcasters, how they look at things differently. So, look, it is forever changing. There will always be different partnerships that come and different partnerships that go. I would always say you've got to have the right partner for the right project, not just creatively, but one that's bought in for the long term. You want sustainable franchises that can return.
Right. Yeah. And kind of the next kind of the step on from that for me in my head, which doesn't necessarily always have the best logical kind of process, but is that kind of we ourselves here at Revision spend a lot of time looking at kind of the different windowing approaches and the sort of innovations there, which was quite a big area of focus kind of this year, really, throughout the whole of this year. God, it's amazing. It's September already. And tracking the flow and windowing of content in global markets is a sort of big thing we did. Lots of looking at kind of the different US kind of activity, sort of co-exclusivity, streamer deals like kind of Disney Plus and Paramount with different kind of local broadcasters. Lots of things going on, basically. And where services are sort of finding synergies in the way they window and sometimes sharing kind of upfront, people realizing upfront what they can do and how they can kind of share content. Sometimes it's distributors kind of who need to sell more, need to fortify their revenues kind of by selling more, kind of might be where commissions might be slowing, therefore they have to make more out of the content they have. With that, the market for services is quite fragmented, so lots of content might still be undiscovered. And I think Netflix has had a lot of success over the last year or so with kind of library content that sort of mirrors that. So why not more windowing, which is sort of what people are looking at now. And I noticed actually yesterday that kind of the recent PAP survey said that kind of secondary rights revenues have grown 36% in 2024, which is kind of coming back to very, very high levels. And I guess, do you kind of, as a distributor, do you see that do you see those changes? Do you see that kind of that looking for more windows and looking to find ways to kind of share and get synergies between services?
we have always tried to maximize windowing. And that's been the same for many, many years. And that was the same, 10 years ago with pay TV. It was always the same windowing strategy. I think, as you say, it's just who's taking which window and in which order. I think those dialogues with buyers about how long their windows are and how long exclusive windows are and sharing have become more frequent. And I think it is about where that audience is and how do you bring that audience in. So they are dialogues that are ongoing all the time. And I agree with you. They're important. And it is about sharing, I think, to maximize, looking at, I think the point you made about secondary revenues or secondary domestic markets is super important. And no one can deny or ignore the fact of how valuable those second, third, fourth, fifth windows are. And brands that are recognizable to a domestic audience will have a long-term value. And we will and have always looked very carefully at how we can maximize those and how we can share them. Looking at, perhaps you're looking at the fourth, fifth window, you're going to AVOD platforms and you're doing them all non-exclusively at the same time because they've all got different audiences. It's still reaching a different audience.
Yeah, I think your point's important. I don't think a lot of people ever stopped kind of windowing to optimize revenues. I think the exception that sort of put an interesting kind of point in certainly in the way we trend things, look at things, is the US studios who launched D2C services, because they did in that period sort of stop, almost stop entirely, but they kind of until the investment community said, kind of, you know what, you have to make a profit one day. You can't just chase subs forever. And then that kind of about phase happened. So, which is sort of I think that in itself has probably impacted everyone a bit, because everyone has still been doing it. But as you say, there's got to be adjustments and different ways you've got to look at it.
Yeah, yes, I do agree with you. But there's big US studios with their own direct-to-consumer offerings, with a lot of US originated content, have got a different approach and a different strategy. We don't necessarily just think about US or English language content. Think about those French language dramas that sell very well in the secondary French market. All the local formats that we produce, it's important for us to retain the IP to sell second, third, fourth, fifth windows in many years in that particular market. A master chef in a European territory will have value in that European territory in 5 years' time. So it's important just to keep an eye on not just that US style content or American or British content. There is multi-window strategy to be very mindful of for each territory around the world, each local market.
That's really interesting, actually. I mean, you obviously, we've mentioned a few times you're massive. You're 130 odd production companies in different markets, and your catalogue kind of therefore has that diversity in terms of its just simply from its country of origin and the language of the content. And there's sort of, to me, there's no doubt that kind of the world's a very different place than it was 20 years ago in terms of kind of then when the possibility of a foreign language show, a non-English, I should say, language show being sold in kind of numerous international markets was pretty much zero. I mean, and that's just dramatically kind of changed over the years, kind of helped by lots of things, maybe not just the world's globalization, but also people like Netflix and other things. But that opportunity with all of those different kind of languages of content you have, what's the sort of response that your clients have to sort of non-English versus English? You painted sort of quite a positive picture just then. Is that true?
Well, I think I've got a couple of points to make on that. And that's sort of for debate rather than strict thoughts. But there's no denying that in scripted, English language is the preferred or the most commonly sold, I should say, language. And I don't think there's any research that doesn't prove that. So, we do very well with English language drama. Now, you corrected yourself on a word that I agree. I don't use it anymore at all. We do talk about English and non-English. But the foreign language, quote unquote, that you used, I think the important thing to think about with that word is foreign to who? So, Spanish language drama to a Latin American audience is still a language that's recognizable, but still foreign. So it's thinking about the origination of where that language comes from and how much affinity someone has to that language. And, French language content will sell to French speaking Belgium and French speaking Canada quite quickly. It's foreign, but still a recognizable language. So it's a interesting slight grayness of it, but something worth thinking about. And I would also say, you said earlier about, perhaps it was Netflix that opened up the world to other languages. Turn the clock back 10 years before they were doing that, Scandinavian Swedish drama has probably, I'm summarizing here, but probably was one of the first, they created that Nordic noir, and it traveled very well across Europe. And, the French and the Germans have always dubbed their American content and other content. So there's always been a travelability of good storytelling between territories. There is probably different languages that have different appeal in different markets. And that is something that's undeniable that has to be looked at. But there'll always be opportunities there for good stories to tell. And it's very difficult to get non-English to travel into the English markets. Not impossible, difficult. But, look at The Bridge. That did very well. Bron did very well in the UK. So there is opportunities there. It's just finding the ones that travel in the really strong storytelling.
Right. And you mentioned a couple of questions ago. You mentioned the AVOD word, and another one of the themes of the past kind of, I'd say probably 12 to 24 months, is that increased activity in this kind of, I'll say, in the ad-funded streaming world, and that ad-funded model has seen kind of a lot more attention, not just kind of not just sort of pure what I'd call it, kind of just general AVOD, but also kind of BVOD, so broadcast VOD, also FAST, which has had a lot of attention. You've done a lot in this space, both AVOD and FAST, and how you mentioned it sort of replacing a kind of replacing some of the pay TV kind of decline. But how do you see that kind of AVOD market evolving, and what might work in terms of what you're doing in that space?
Well, look, we've got a whole digital division that Sean Keeble runs, and I won't speak on his behalf on how well he's running that business, and we're doing incredibly well in that space. AVOD's traditionally led by YouTube, and there's been plenty of research that how well YouTube are doing and how their ads are doing and how much revenue they're generating. That is a very good space to be. And I think, in my view, AVOD is a strong growing business that's been growing, coming out of COVID and the recovery of the ad markets. You can't deny how well those platforms have been growing. It is dominated by the US and Canada, and then other markets like the UK and Australia, New Zealand, Germany are coming up fast behind. But it has become a very good source of revenue, a good source of consumer engagement. It allows us the data to see what's being consumed. And it is a way of really exploiting your catalogue. So the AVOD is a growing market. You can't deny how important it is to exploit your catalogue. It is a way to perhaps find ways to generate revenue on multiple hours that have not been actively exploited for a long time. And I personally find it fascinating that you see shows cutting through and finding an audience that you didn't think would, and vice versa. Shows that you think that's going to be a slam dunk hit in that sort of space don't quite have the same resonance that they have in the past. So I think it's an important market in general for distributors. They're of course not in the original space, and I don't think they will be in the original space for some time yet. There's some exception to that. But it's a very important business for us.
Yeah, I think you're right. Obviously, AVOD gets complicated by the fact that some AVODs are actually maybe part of a big part of a big US network like Tubi, or part of so kind of the rules there are slightly different in terms of what might pop up as what they may call an original. But you're right. I think kind of it does seem like a kind of great opportunity to kind of to work the catalogue and get more content out there. Right? And do you fit in the same breath as AVOD, kind of the broadcaster VOD offers? Is that where you would fit those in a discussion?
Yes and no. You've got a mix there between they're still licensing content as a linear broadcaster would, or they're doing rev share deals. I think it really depends on which territory you're in and who you're talking to. But they are very open to different types of deals. Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're looking at both sorts and different sources of IP.
Right.
But yes, I mix it all in the same bag, and the revenue's coming from the same place. It's just, again, it's looking at those BVODs, who their audience is and who they're trying to attract. And that will dictate the type of content they're looking for.
Right, absolutely. And in terms of, you mentioned IP in that last discussion. One other thing that we found interesting, actually, that came out of us, the tracking work we do with our show tracker product, was we look at the source of projects that are premiering each season, and in 24, by the end of 24, there was sort of marked decline in this is actually only scripted content, but there was a marked decline in the share of premieres that were coming from original concepts. I know it's a little bit tricky because some of them are kind of a literary kind of come from literary kind of sources, and that doesn't classify as an original concept. In some cases, it might almost be a fairly original concept. But do you think, is there a need at the moment for proven IP, for kind of scripted, and I guess in terms of formats being proven as well? Is that something that's quite more important now in the current climate?
In scripted, I could sit and debate this for an hour with you probably, but in scripted, in terms of pre-existing IP, it doesn't hurt. I think sometimes it's extremely useful and it is a good selling point. But on the other hand, original IP can be very strong. Look at Adolescence, original IP, not based on book IP, versus Wolf Hall, absolutely based on a best-selling book. Both are extremely important pieces of television that have done it incredibly well. I personally think in scripted, a good script is a good script and a good idea is a good idea. And that, if that happens to be from book IP, great. But for our slate, it doesn't necessarily have to be. We've got a good strong mix between book IP, sort of character-based IP, as in behind my head with Bergerac, or original. Like it's an interesting one. In formats, proven format IP is really important, and I think some territories in the world are perhaps a bit more risk averse in format. So having a proven territory success into the second season is the golden egg. But it's still taking a risk on new format IP is something we do a lot of, and it's about the strength of Banijay Entertainment in terms of how those territories can take format IP and adapt it to those local markets and reinvent stuff as well, and how we can look at nostalgia and archive IP and how you can reinvent that for a modern audience.
Right. I mean, I think as you almost said it the way I would say it in the middle there, sort of, if it's good TV, it's good TV. It doesn't really matter where it's come from. but yeah, it's just interesting to see. Yeah,
I've said for years, a good script is a good script, and a good script will eventually get made. It may take a long time, but it will get made. I remember the story from quite a few years ago. Ashes to Ashes was in development for 8 years. Look at the incredible show that was. So it's good scripts will get made.
Yeah. So, talking about good things, let's move on to what you've got coming up. What is it? September the 11th today. We're recording this. MIP will be on us soon. What have you got coming up that's exciting that you'll be taking to MIP?
So for MIP this year, we continue with a strong slate. I think starting with scripted, it is, as we were just talking about with IP, it's a diverse mix between strong IP created by big name talent versus book IP and original IP. One of the key things on Slate is Richard Gadd's next drama called Half Man that's being produced by Mam Tor for the BBC and HBO. Just an incredible piece of drama that, hard-hitting, strong cast, strong IP between Richard Gadd and Jamie Bell between them. So that's going to be a very noisy piece. That was, I think there was a clip shown in Edinburgh last month. So there's been a little bit of a tease already out there. So as I say, strong drama from strong talent. On top of that, we have the new adaptation of the Barbara Taylor Bradford book, Woman of Substance, being produced for Channel 4 by The Forge, with Brenda Blethyn in that lead as Emma Hart. So a modern retelling of that classic book, strong piece of IP. Also from The Forge for Channel 4 is a new drama called Falling, which is a story of love versus lust, which is Keeley Hawes and Papa Essiaidu as a priest and a vicar, and priest and a nun, I should say, and how their lives collide and does love tear them apart. That is written by Jack Thorne. So a huge piece of writing talent across the board. We've also got, in terms of talking about IP, we've got a new reboot of the Henning Menkel book, Wallander, being produced in its original Swedish language for TV4 by Jofsky Bird. And that is going to be starring one of the Skarsgård brothers, that's Gustav Skarsgård. So strong IP, very well-known book IP that is being adapted for a modern audience. And from another third party in Australia, being produced by Hoodlum for Paramount Plus, is 2 Years Later, which is a lovely, beautiful, romantic comedy drama about two people sharing a bus every day before COVID, and then COVID hits and they don't see each other for 2 years. Cut to 2 years later, do they get married? And following their journey of dates as they're going on, can they build a life together after being ripped apart? There's just a couple of highlights. Returning, as I mentioned earlier about sustainable franchises, we've got some great returning series. So very recently announced SES Rogue Heroes being produced by Kudos for the BBC and MGM Plus is returning for a third very explosive run. And I mentioned earlier, and it's behind me, is Bergerac. They're currently producing a second season down in Jersey. Hopefully the weather's a bit better down there than it is in London right now. So it's a great piece of nostalgic, well-known IP being produced for UK TV. Last year, we worked with Playground Entertainment to launch The Hardacres on Channel 5 as a Victorian rags to riches story. That is back for second season and filming right now. Signora Volpe, again, something very different. Emilia Fox as a ex-spy solving a mystery each week in Italy. That's being produced for Acorn by Route 24. Again, story of the week, cozy crime, thriller piece, has found a very strong audience internationally. And then we were talking about non-English language drama earlier. From Banijay Studios France Television, we have Disenchanted, which is a book adaptation of a 2022 novel of the same name, which is following the story of mysterious disappearance of a 15-year-old, and a big case that shocked the entire nation, as a 4-part crime thriller in French. And from my Dutch label NL Film, they had a series last year called Anonymous. That's being produced for a second season for the NPO, which is a vigilante man solving crimes in secret from his family. It's a great high-energy thriller. So the overall scripted slate is diverse and broad and has a lot of action and adventure and IP. It's a real mix of dramas.
That sounds great. I think personally, I was particularly interested in the new Wallander adaptation. As I always love those books, and the Skarsgårds are great. So that'd be interesting to see.
I mean, it's amazing that it's been over 15 years since the Kenneth Branagh versions for the BBC.
Yeah.
So it's time for a new version, and in his native language as well, which is a good authenticity to it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I thought the Wallander show was the one with Kenneth Branagh was a great show, and I found it sort of interesting, kind of the premise of it being in English but Swedish, but it did sit in the back of my head, slightly troubling me sometimes. But so we'll see. That'd be great, and that's really interesting. I mean, that's great stuff. Do you have a feel for MIPCOM this year? Do you feel like there's going to be lots of people there? Is it got a good buzz around it?
I think so. My diary is already looking very busy. I think there is people coming back to the market. Yes, it's challenging times, but as I say, people still need content. So they are out there looking at the market, as you noted earlier about the big US studios and their direct-to-consumer platforms. And in general, the volume coming through the traditional output deals is down. So content from the big distributors is in demand.
Yeah, the people we talk to, it's all sounding pretty positive. Tell us about the unscripted you've got coming up at MIP.
So as I say, unscripted is broad and diverse general entertainment for us. We've got a very varied mix of titles coming to the market. Akala, who's the well-known poet laureate from the UK, he's doing a film for the BBC called Akala Divided Kingdom, based on his book called Natives, which is his exploration of the current state of culture in the UK. So it's a very different narrative to the cultural society right now. A friend of ours here at Banijay's, Bear Grylls, he's got a new series for the BBC called Wild Reckoning, which is being produced by the Dragon House, which is the Welsh production arm of Workabee here at Banijay Entertainment. This is Bear on his island in Wales and a team of experts helping people resolve sort of deep personal rifts and personal traumas through using, mentors, survival experts, psychologists, taking those civilians or contributors through emotional journeys. So it's a 16-part series for BBC, which is going to be wonderful. We've represented for a few years now Eva Longoria. So she did Searching for Mexico, then Searching for Spain. She's off on her travels again, and she's now searching for France. So she's got a new authentic travelogue series looking for food across the whole of the French nation, which should be exciting. We've also announced Mission to Space with the YouTube and TikTok sensation Francis Bourgeoisie, who was recently announced as host of the Grand Tour. So he is going off to do something he's always wanted to do, which is go into space. So he's training to be an astronaut, and he's been across to NASA to do all of the training. It's a wonderful watch that Shine TV have made for Channel 4. It's he's quite a character. Absolutely wonderful, lovely film. Two-parter.
That's great, because that's in that space that seems to be an interesting one right now, where companies are trying to bring influences in from the creator economy to kind of more mainstream productions, and so it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, there's not many, as you said, there's not many talent yet that have broken through from creator to traditional mainstream. Him cracking into the Grand Tour as well is he's going mainstream presenting, and I like him and what he brings to the audience, and it's a different way of speaking to an audience. I think that'll do well. And I think you've seen, obviously, very sadly, that Ozzy Osbourne passed away. We are bringing to market as well the one-off doc for the BBC from Expectation, which is following Ozzy's journey back to the UK before he passed away, which is a beautiful film that the BBC will launch hopefully later this autumn.
That will be, I look forward to seeing that, actually. That should be a good film. No, that's great. You're going to be, sounds like you're going to be busy at MIP. Sounds like you're going to be busy before MIP as well. But I think that's probably time for us, Simon. That was great. That was really good to chat. And thank you so much for your time. If I don't see you before, I wish you the best at MIP, and we'll have to catch up sometime soon.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it should be a good MIP. Slate is strong. The content's out there. I think the market is coming back alive after a bit of a tough time. So I think hopefully some good news stories from everyone, hopefully, because we need a good, strong, healthy market. Should be a good market. And thank you for your time. It's been great to chat.
Great.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Inside Content, the TV industry podcast brought to you by 3Vision. With decades of TV industry experience and real-world success, we know the ins and outs of the market like nobody else. To learn more about our TV consultancy services, head to 3vision.tv.